Artists working in video, especially electronic image making, have often worked in collaboration. Now that we've introduced yet another tool to the process, like a computer, it's probably even more so. I wanted you to talk a little bit about your collaborative efforts and how the three of you work as a team to generate your work.
Well, we got a lot of practice because Vibeke and I started out as TV, and we needed yet a better hand at some of the parts that go into the production. That brought Dean in, and now we're WTV with Dean Winkler.
When we work as a trio, it's nice because the process of working with a real-time video medium, as much as you can plan what you want to do and you have a direction that you're flowing in, you never really know exactly what's going to come out, as opposed to plotting every pixel where you know exactly what hopefully is going to come out. And it's always a thrill because we're sort of the first viewers of our work as a group. And then we all just sort of share from there.
I would say that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And since we're probably all pretty complicated people, the result is generally a very complicated work of art. And we're all very sensitive in different ways. I'd say Dean is a wizard, and so is Tom. My particular contribution is probably more on an aesthetic level and timing level.
The whole is greater than the sum of the arts, and Vibeke draws in both music and motion graphics. It's that combination that characterizes the kind of work we've been doing, which has been called visual music. We used to call it light music. John Whitney called it motion graphics, and his book Digital Harmony gave it a name, which is that there is harmony for seeing. You can see music, and like music groups, we work as an ensemble.
I was going to say that in your work throughout the years, you've always incorporated human elements and motion into work. And Voyage goes into almost like a different realm. It's almost like a surreal kind of piece. And the imagery, it's very difficult sometimes when I first view the tape to figure out which was the synthesized images and which were the manipulated images in terms of from the real world. And it was almost like a game for me to be able to try to guess and sort of see how
that's a good place to start.
So maybe you can sort of talk about that.
Sure. Well, let me start this. Almost everything in Voyage is synthetic. The only real images, quote unquote, are the Jupiter itself, which we got courtesy of NASA, which we then had to animate slightly. But the mountainscape in the foreground that runs throughout the piece is actually a FFT audio analyzer, which is meant for doing room acoustics, but it has an inherent noise in the device, which is what you're seeing. And then the rest of it is completely synthetic, the inside, the outside. It's all made up pretty much with conventional video frame stores, some custom computer controlling, but just used in non-conventional ways, which brings to light the point that for the amount of video technology that now exists in the world, what actually gets done with it is really pretty poor. I mean, the amount of cube turns and garbage you see on TV, those same toys, when put in other people's hands, can really make some very beautiful things. And it's a shame that it isn't used more than it is.
And if I may elaborate on that, when the artists do use these tools, oftentimes they bring into play further considerations for creative work, which means that if the artist is working with a tool, they might feel that it should be developed in a specific way to accommodate the vision of the artist. And that, in turn, may direct the development of new tools.
I've often felt that artists tend to sort of push technology to new limits to try to get more out of it based on an image that they have in their heads that they want to get out. And I want to maybe Tom would be a good person to talk about that.
Well, the tools that have developed might be as powerful in a sense as the wheel when it was invented, because the tools allow motion, just as the wheel first gave us the ability to move ourselves around in our things. The electronic graphic devices that we use allow us to make pictures as classical plastic artists have made pictures since cave paintings, but now we can make them move. And it's the time element Voyage shows. Voyage is about space, of course, and the Jupiter theme is certainly space in more ways than one. But it's a moving piece. It has a beginning and a middle and an end, and it's the change element that has become a focus for our activity. The custom computer that Dean has worked on gives us control over time. It's a controller for 1-inch SIMTC helical VTRs, and the time element in those machines becomes variable. There's a real-time one-to-one, or time can slow down, speed up, or go backwards. And we've done a great deal of experimentation with that. We've made a piece with a dancer, for example, where the movement of the dancer is very precisely controlled to emphasize certain elements of the dance that aren't visible in real time.
And it does create, it does create an impression that's a very surrealistic impression. When you do change the time base of motion, especially motion from objects taken from the real world, it takes you to other spaces and other dimensions. So it's quite deliberate when we're slowing things down or speeding them up.
When you began working, you were dealing mostly with analog devices. That's what we had access to. Do you find that the digital control, I mean, the thing that I've always appreciated about the computer is that it's given us almost a new language in which to compose. In other words, we're no longer just held down to a ramp that has a certain lifespan, but that we can now really have a way of creating works that do have a beginning, a middle, and an end over a greater period of time. And that gives you sort of a lot more freedom in terms of your creative potential, but it also creates a new structure in which you have to compose your work. And I'd like you to talk a little bit about that, because I think this piece really gets into that.
I'd like to make analogies between what we do and music. And historically speaking, I think there's an analogy in the evolution of the piano as an instrument, which was, in a sense, a digital instrument, and was necessary to elevate music to its highest levels as a compositional tool and a performance tool. And we've seen an evolution from effective but simpler instruments to an instrument that incorporates this element of numerical control. The numbers may include time elements, and computers have a memory. That ability to retain, change information makes it possible to control the evolution of a piece. So the Voyage, for example, exists as an edit list in part, and that's where the computers that Dean's been working with really play a very important role.
Yeah, maybe I can pick up on that a little. Two things. The first is that in Voyage, a lot of the work footage we spent a lot of time in editing suites, generating the material, and a lot of it I would describe really as directed improvisation. And when you were doing that, that's a little less computer dialogue than it is still analog parameters, key levels, sizes, things. Computer dialogue, on the other hand, that goes into assembling a piece like Voyage. There's been a tremendous amount of talk at SIGGRAPH about making things user-friendly. I think that's been the one buzzword of this conference, and we've really spent a lot of time. That's the goal of the computer system we've been working on, is a real user-friendly integration system that integrates your frame store, your switcher, your 1-inch machines, and makes it all friendly enough so that a non-programming type person can walk up to it in about an hour to really be able to control all the time elements. And I think that's evolving. Video is still a very high bandwidth signal, and it's very hard to make digital real-time video. So there's still a lot of analog things. I think we're still 4 or 5 years off from seeing a full digital video switcher in the way a state-of-the-art video switcher exists now with all its keying levels, etc. But we're getting there, and it's exciting to see where things are going.
Well, video is a performance medium. I think that's very important, much as music is. And it's true that with 3 people we have 6 hands, and with the help of the computer, far more, because it, of course, remembers where our hands have been. But I'd like to say that real-time media are essential for an artist, I think, working in performance. And light music combines the images and the sounds so that the synesthetic experience becomes the most important thing.
They say a picture's worth 1,000 words, and in some ways an analog's worth 1,000 calculations. There'll always be that element.
The dynamics are so important for the expression of the feeling. Now, there are many different artists working in different ways, but I think the way we're working is the abstract experience, the abstract feelings that are extracted from the work.